Example 3 for 7.2. Sketch the graph of the given function, then find the desired properties. So we want to sketch this graph first using a table of values. We know what it's going to look like a little bit, so we know that it's opening down. We know we'll have a y-intercept of 3, and we know it should be moving to the left. So table of values, x and y, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. So what is our y value if our x value is -2? So plugging that in, -2 squared is 4, but times a negative is -4. -2 times -2 is +4, so those will cancel, +3. So our y value will be 3 at that point. -1 squared is 1 with the negative attached, though still is -1. -2 times -1 is +2. +3 is 4. 0 minus 0 plus 3, so it's just going to be our y-intercept. 1 squared is 1 with a minus, -1. -2 times 1 is -2, plus 3. -3 plus 3 is 0. And 2 squared is 4 with a negative in front. -2 times 4 is -8, plus 3. Sorry, -4, that should have been. Plus 3, so -8 plus 3 is -5. Plotting those points. We know where our vertex will be because we have two values that are 3. It's going to be the middle of -2 and 0. Which will be -1. So our vertex is going to be at -1 for sure. Now we need to solve for what our y value will be at that point. So y equals -1 squared minus 2 times -1 plus 3. -1 squared is 1 with a negative, plus 2 plus 3 is 4. So our vertex is at -1 and 4. So you can plot that point. We know it's opening down from our a value. Our y-intercept is at 3. And then we can plot our other points. So -1 and 4 we know is our vertex. -2 and 3. 1 and 0. And 2 and -5. Try that again. It's hard with my shadow here. You'll want to be as accurate as you can going through your points. All right, so let's answer some of these questions. Y-intercept. We don't just want to write the number. I want you to put at y equals 3. My x-intercept is when x equals 1. We also had another one at -3. If you're ever not sure if your graph's a little bit off, that's when your y value is 0. So if we factored this, so let's do that up here, up top. When my y is 0, I have a negative, factor out a negative, and I'll have x squared plus 2x minus 3. So opposite signs. From factoring in grade 10 foundations, what multiplies to a times c? So 1 times -3. So what multiplies to -3 and adds to 2 would be -1 and 3. So we'd write that x minus 1 and x plus 3. So the zeros then, what makes those two brackets 0? Well, if I put in a 1 here, if x equals 1, everything equals 0. But if x also equals -3, that everything would equal 0. And we know our x-intercept exists when our y is 0. So those are our two x-intercepts. Axis of symmetry is your x value from your vertex. So when x equals -1, your domain is x is the element of the real numbers. It's everything here. We have no restriction. Goes on forever. And our y value is less than whatever our max is from our vertex. So y is less than or equal to 4 from our vertex. Example B, let's start with our table of values. -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. -2 squared is 4. -2 minus 2 is 0. -1 squared is 1. -1 minus 2 is -2. 0 squared plus 0 minus 2 is -2. 1 squared plus 1 minus 2 is 0. And 2 squared, which is 4, plus 2 minus 2 is 4. So here are our identical y values. My vertex is going to exist, axis of symmetry and vertex for x value will exist in between -1 and 0, which is going to be -0.5. Again, we can check that. -1 plus 0 divided by 2 is really just -1/2 or -0.5. To identify our y value at that point, we want to plug that in. So -0.5 squared plus -0.5 minus 2 gives us -2.25. So my vertex is at -0.5 and -2.25. Now we can plot those points. -1/2, -2.25 be somewhere right here, or a little bit lower. We've got -2 and 0 as a point, -1 and -2, 0 and -2, 1 and 0, and 2 and 4. We know our graph will be opening up because our a value is a +1. Our y-intercept is going to be -2, which it was. So y-intercept, y equals -2. Our x-intercepts, we can see here, are at 1 and -2. So when x equals 1 and when x equals -2. Our axis of symmetry is our x value from our vertex. So that if I were to draw a line right through the middle that would show my graph is symmetrical, that would be right on x is -0.5. My domain, XER, x is an element of the reals, again, no restrictions. My range, now I have a minimum value because it's opening up, so y is greater than or equal to our lowest point, which was -2.25.